Welcome back to Business Next. Welcome back to the program. A couple of interesting guests. Paul Artale is the coordinator of leadership and financial education for the graduate school at Michigan State University. And he is joined by Julia McAnallen, director of PhD Career Services at State. Paul and Julia, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
We are here to talk about why employers should hire PhDs, men and women with their doctorates. So let's start out. First of all, I guess, what is MSU's interest in trying to help PhDs find jobs at small businesses?
Well, I guess I'll take this one. So traditionally, PhDs were trained to be tenure-track faculty members in higher education universities, and there just aren't very many positions open for across the fields, whether it be humanities, social sciences, or STEM fields, the science technology fields. And so these are really highly qualified and highly skilled people, and we think that PhD is a really valuable degree, and that the skills that these people have would be really useful in a wide variety of government, nonprofit, industry jobs throughout our economy.
I have a little personal background in this area, in this particular topic. My son-in-law has a PhD in neuroscience. He happens to work for Google out in California.
Excellent. Good.
So for a small business, what kinds of PhDs might be suitable to work at a typical small business? I think as myself as a former small business owner, I'd be kind of intimidated thinking that, well, gosh, why would a highly educated man or woman with a PhD want to work at my small business?
Interesting. I didn't know you want to.
I'll jump on this.
Yeah.
I think, well, that's part of the misconceptions we're trying to break down here is don't be intimidated by someone with a PhD, that they can offer lots of benefits to the company, and that in a lot of cases, people who graduate from Michigan State want to stay in the area, and they're looking for an opportunity that's going to advance them and root them in an area. And as someone who's about to finish his PhD, knock on wood, in about a year, I like Lansing, I like Michigan, and I want to stay here. And so a lot of this is a talent retention effort. And in terms of being intimidated and what type of PhD, our answer is any type of PhD. Really what you have to look at when you're hiring people is who's a good fit for your company and what are the skills that you want. I think most business owners would agree that you want someone who has great analytical skills, who can be creative, think outside the box, and has a little bit more of seasoned maturity than maybe an undergraduate or someone coming straight out of the university system. So I think there's a lot of benefits you can get from hiring a PhD student.
I think that many employers might initially think that someone with a PhD would be out of their price range to work at a small business. Is that the case?
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think it's definitely a common misconception. I think it's because a lot of people, when they think of hiring and talent with advanced degrees, are thinking of MBAs. And MBAs typically have much higher, I mean, I hate to say it, but MBAs typically have much higher salary expectations than PhDs. So I think employers need to think about why it would be that they would want an MBA, someone with a master's in business administration. Why do they want someone with, what skills do these people have? And then think, because a lot of times the PhD candidates have these same skills, and they actually are willing to work, at least initially, for less. So there's a cost savings there actually for employers.
You alluded to this when we first started talking, that there's a stereotype that men and women with PhDs are sort of on a track to become faculty. Is that a concern for small business owners, that you might hire a PhD and they'll leave soon if they get an opportunity to teach or do research?
I'm going to say no. And based on this, that if you're not going the faculty track, then generally you have no interest in that, especially in the short term. And so I think most PhDs, if they're looking for a non-academic position, they want to be in industry, in the nonprofit sector or whatever. And I think that I wouldn't worry about them jumping ship just to get a faculty position. And I think that's a lot of what Julie and I deal with when students come in and see us, are those who are on a PhD track and realize, well, I don't want to be a professor. That's not the life for me. I want something else. And we do some career exploration. Oh, this would be great. I like this industry, or I like nonprofit, and So then we try to bridge those connections, and so I don't think that's a concern.
Yeah, it's really just people who are passionate about problem solving, about the topic they're interested in, and creative solutions to problems. And I think that these are people who would be interested and stimulated in a lot of different work. And those ones again, who, as Paul said, who are pursuing these other types of positions are I think going to be reliable and good workers.
Let me bring this segment to a close and then have you stay here for another segment to talk about this interesting topic. Paul Artale and Julia McAnallen are with Michigan State University. We're talking about getting PhDs working in the small business economy. We'll be back with more right after this quick break. You're listening to Business Next, a part of the Michigan Business Network. Welcome back to Business Next, and a really interesting conversation I'm having with Paul Artale. He's the coordinator of leadership and financial education for the graduate school at Michigan State University, along with his colleague Julia McAnallen, director of PhD services, PhD Career Services at MSU. We're talking about how to get more PhDs working in the small business economy, and of course you mentioned in the first segment that there's a number of stereotypes that kind of have to be overcome on from the standpoint of small employers, thinking about maybe having PhDs working at your small business enterprise. One of the stereotypes I think is that there's this image that PhDs are almost like monks. They're into research and they got their nose stuck in front of the microscope or in the library, and maybe in people and leadership skills they're a bit lacking. What's your perspective on that?
Well, the majority of PhDs have to spend usually at least a year, if not a couple of years, teaching. And many also spend a lot of time in research labs where they work in collaborative research projects, especially in science fields. And these activities, regardless of how introverted or shy a person might be, these activities really force someone to get skills in terms of speaking in front of people, being comfortable talking about the technical topics with non-technical audiences. And so these are things that often their counterparts who don't have PhDs will not have those skills coming into the job market.
Now, Paul, we were chatting between the segments. You had a really good example of how one particular segment of business takes advantage of history PhDs.
Yeah, we were talking about the video game industry, but we could also add Hollywood, TV to that. And so think about anytime you watch a historical film on TV or you play Call of Duty on your Xbox or your PlayStation, your console of choice, they have to hire someone, or they choose to hire someone, they being the game companies, to fact check the game. If it takes place in Normandy, let's stay with World War II, they're going to have someone check that the campaign is more or less historically accurate, the uniforms, the weaponry, even civilian clothing, weather, if it's June. All these things actually become factors in creating these games and these programs. And so it becomes a way for those with a history PhD and a background to get work in an industry that you would traditionally not think about it. I was a history major as an undergraduate, and the track was high school teacher, museum curator, and or professor. That was about it. And that was just when the video game industry was starting to really expand. And one of my professors said, "You should look at this as a career option." And that's how I started to really learn about it. So it's far. Jobs for PhDs and those with advanced degrees are far beyond just what we traditionally think. And with the internet and the knowledge economy that's coming out, the possibilities really are endless.
So, Julia, what is Michigan State University doing in terms of an initiative to help connect PhDs with small business owners?
Well, this initiative is just getting started. My position was just recently created. I started just in May of this year, and the idea was to hire me to expand opportunities for PhDs, or to actually create connections between doctoral candidates and small business owners and other employers, both locally and nationally. But really, locally is what's most interesting to us, because again, we're very interested in retaining local talent, and this is big talent that we could, that businesses should try to be retaining in this area. These people who have the advanced degrees and skill sets that PhDs have. So we're coming and talking to you, hoping to spread the word through this. We're also trying to, talk one-on-one with employers when possible, and also educating doctoral candidates themselves about what they're able to do, because if they are able to talk about their skills to employers, that's really the most important thing, is that they're able to advertise and market themselves and what they bring to the table.
Well, I think the biggest eye-opener for me from our conversation is that I just had this impression that most of the PhDs working in the small business economy were in, Michigan's biomedical industry. That's where I at least read about, while I'm on our staff is, 3 or 4 PhDs and so forth. But it's really surprising the breadth of skills that can be brought to bear on the kinds of challenges that small business owners face in trying to make their businesses successful. Lots of different types of PhDs and subject areas, just as Paul mentioned, video game producers needing history PhDs. A small business owner, if we've piqued their interest, they think, maybe I ought to look at PhD job candidates. How can MSU help them get connected?
Well, they can come and talk to us. They can look at our website, which is just, currently it's just career success all together, .msu.edu/PhD careers, again, all one word. There are some resources where you can find out about, different things about PhDs there. You can also just set up an appointment to come talk to us. If you're local, we're just over in East Lansing, and we'd be happy to talk with any small business owners who want to find out more or meet with PhD candidates.
Sounds like a great program. I've been talking with Paul Artale, the coordinator of leadership and financial education for the graduate school at Michigan State University, and his colleague Julia McAnallen, director of PhD Career Services at State. Paul and Julia, thanks so much for joining us today on Business Next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up today's edition of Business Next. If you like this show, please remember there's an archive of previous programs that you can listen to anytime at your convenience over your PC or mobile device by going to sbam.org/radio. And you can get online alerts when new shows are available by liking our Facebook page. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, MW Rogers, that's MWROGERS on Twitter. I'm looking forward to sharing great business growth tips and advice next time on Business Next.